Mom's meatloaf, the ultimate comfort food, is now being reimagined in a new cookbook by New York Times political writers Frank Bruni and Jennifer Steinhauer. They gave CBS Sunday Morning's Rocca a closer look at the dish that's been gracing dinner tables for more than a century. Mo, good morning.
Good morning, Anthony. When you think of meatloaf, you may be like our two authors who fondly remember their mother and grandmother's versions. Or maybe you weren't such a fan of that traditional mix of beef, pork, and veal with a generous slathering of ketchup or tomato sauce. Now this meal they call the Meryl Streep of comfort foods with its multitudinous versions is coming into its own.
It is amazing how much meatloaf bigotry there is out there.
The iconic American dish deserves some respect.
I frequently now serve meatloaf when I have people over for dinner. And when they come and they say, what are we having? Or when you tell them and you say a meatloaf, there's this look on their faces like, you know, we trudged all the way over here and you're giving us a meatloaf. But if you give them the right meatloaf, they leave happy campers.
Championing its renaissance, New York Times political writers Frank Bruni and Jennifer Steinhauer discovered a mutual passion, meatloaf. So it was sort of a binding agent between the two of you.
It was our breadcrumbs.
It was.
It was our breadcrumbs and our egg.
A little egg,
Yeah.
not too many eggs.
What is your history with meatloaf?
I started making meatloaf more when I had my own children because it's obviously something that you can make for an entire family pretty quickly with just one side.
The two are remixing Mom's old standby in their new meatloaf cookbook, with nearly 50 recipes experimenting with muffins, meats, and international ingredients.
You can take almost any flavor profile and you can make it into a meatloaf, and you've got the form and the shape and the texture of a meatloaf, but you've got the flavors of some other dish in your memory, and it's a cool cooking and a cool eating experience.
Well, it also sounds like a fun party game.
Totally.
Also,
Yeah.
to kind of blindfold people and, you know, is this the real thing or is it meatloaf?
I tend not to blindfold my dinner guests, but I think that's a good suggestion.
This would be your most classic one, I think, here, really with the emphasis on the tomato sauce and the saucing.
Right. Some food historians trace meatloaf's history back to ancient Rome. But meatloaf as we know it became widely popular during the Depression and World War II.
People were trying to kind of eat cheaply, they were trying to stretch protein, and they were trying to do things that weren't complicated.
Since then, whether loved or despised,
Families are sitting down for dinner again. Actually at the table. Why?
That's the meatloaf.
And I would do anything for love.
it's become an American staple.
I don't like this meatloaf much.
And this is my specialty, meatloaf.
What are we having?
Meatloaf?
I'm allergic to it.
You hungry? Hey, Ma! Can we get some meatloaf?
We are making a Greek meatloaf with lamb, and then the main flavors in it are feta, toasted pine nuts.
Could you get some oil going there? A little mixing, not too crazy.
Okay. So what did everybody think of La La Land?
All right, now I'm going to start crying, not because we're having a fight, but because onions do that to me. Mo, we have one other assignment for you, which is can you moisten these pieces of bread?
Here we go. And you don't want to overdo it.
Jennifer, how
Yes.
does it feel?
It feels very lovely. It feels like home.
Do you want to mix?
Are you feeling it? All right.
Are your hands clean?
Yes, I did. I washed them twice.
Are you sure?
Okay, you're being a little aggressive.
Oh.
Can we go a little bit softer?
You're holding that like you're delivering a child.
Because
What's going on
I made
here?
him nervous.
We are going to make one of the Donald's favorite dishes, meatloaf.
Like many Americans, President Donald Trump's mother used to make her son meatloaf.
If you look at Donald Trump's favorite recipe, which is his mom's meatloaf, it's a meatloaf proudly without nuance. Whether you're talking about Trump or any other politician, and we have some politicians' meatloaves in the book, it is uncanny how much their meatloaves end up saying about them.
In a rare bipartisan gastronomic display, Senators Chuck Schumer and Susan Collins both contributed recipes.
I really love meatloaf because my mother had this amazing recipe. She was not a very good cook, but she made the meatloaf and barbecued chicken so well together.
My mother is a wonderful cook and could make anything, but her meatloaf was something that all 6 of us kids just loved.
You mentioned that meatloaf is polarizing. I would think it could bring people together.
It does. It brought them together in that chapter. People say time heals all wounds. I think meatloaf heals all wounds. Say when.
That's good. Thank you.
Guys, what is the future of meatloaf?
I think the future of meatloaf maybe is going to be more on restaurant menus. But it is the ultimate comfort food, and I think people just enjoy seeing it.
I think you could see, as people become more comfortable with experimenting, as they realize that many of these dishes stretch as far as your imagination can go, I think you'll see more meatloaf.
And this really is terrific. And you're not in favor of trying to rebrand meatloaf, give it a new name.
We don't want to rebrand meatloaf. We want to redeem meatloaf.
Perfect end line for this piece. Oh, a few tips from Frank and Jennifer. Most meatloaves are better cooked on a tray, not in a loaf pan, so that you can spoon the juices back over the loaf, and it's easier to slice and serve. Also, meatloaf is great reheated, sometimes better on day 2 or day 3 when the flavors have congealed and
they're together.
Yeah, exactly.
I love the two of them together. I love Frank Bruni's line, ending meatloaf bigotry.
Yes.
Right.
He was great. He was great. The two of them are awesome.
Much maligned meatloaf is.
Exactly. And it is interesting how he said you can make a meatloaf that tastes exactly like mac and cheese or chicken wings, or it's something entirely different.
Was that meatloaf good?
Very good. It was Greek meatloaf. The lamb, he loves lamb in particular for meatloaf.
I've seen meatloaf with raisins in it. Good stuff.
With raisins?
Yes, it's really good.
Oh, come on.
Molly's
Open
in
your
Santa
mind.
Barbara,
Open your
really
mind.
good meatloaf. Put some
Okay.
raisins in
Will
it.
you take a picture next time? And
I will.
Instagram it? Okay.
Nora's more hamburger person. Meatloaf and hamburgers are kissing cousins.
Okay. All right, you can hear more of Mo's interview on the CBS This Morning podcast on iTunes and Apple Podcast app, including what the authors say is the most underrated part of the meatloaf dish.